My name's Mike Nielsen. I've been working in BT Applied Research for quite a long time now, over 30 years. And all of that time, I've been working on video and TV. Initially, it's a video conferencing system, room-based systems. More recently, looking particularly at how we get BT Sport over the internet onto people's TVs, phones, and so on. We're trying to give the best pictures that we can, both in terms of resolution, in terms of contrast and color, but also making sure the videos continue to play out whatever happens on the network. Now, the format for this session is I made a little video about 10 minutes long a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to show that first. And while you're watching that, think up any questions you'd like to ask. The more questions you can think up, the better. Now, what this video is going to do, hopefully, and I've written it all myself. I set up the environment at home myself, and I presented it myself. Now, I'm not a professional presenter, so it's not going to perhaps be as professional as a TV program, but hopefully the messages will come across. So what I'm trying to say in this video is what are the problems we have when we're trying to deliver TV, for example, through the internet onto a mobile phone? What's happened in the industry to address those problems, and what we've been doing in BT Research, particularly to look at these issues. So while you're watching the video, think of any question, put them into the chat. There's no silly questions, just go ahead, put in any question you like. The rest of the audience won't see your question, so don't worry about what you type in. I've got my colleague Rory also in this session, who's going to be looking at the questions, and he'll be asking me the questions once we finish watching the video. And the whole session should be finished by 10 o'clock. So first thing, I'm going to play the video. Hi, I'm Mike. I work in applied research at Adastral Park, looking into the delivery of television services. Our team looks to invent and test new ideas. We file patents and we publish papers at conferences. And earlier this month, we won an award for one of our pieces of work at a conference. Today, I'm going to talk about the problem of how we get television content from somewhere like a studio or stadium through the internet onto your phone, onto your TV, onto your tablet, onto your computer. Now, the first problem we have is the amount of data we need to send. For example, if we're looking at sending high-definition TV, high definition is only 2 megapixels per picture, 2 megapixels per picture. But each pixel is 24 bits because we have red, green, and blue, each needing 8 bits. That makes 24 in total. And to get video, we need to have more pictures than just one. So we normally have about 25 pictures per second. With HD. So we need to multiply by 25. So how many megabits does that come to altogether? Well, hopefully you've got your calculators there, because the answer is 1,200 megabits per second. That's the data rate we would need to get high-definition TV services over broadband into your home. Now, my broadband connection, which I'm really, really happy with, is 40 megabits per second. Now, 40 is a lot less than 1,200. In fact, it's 30 times less. So I would need not one broadband line to get TV into my home, I would need 30 of them. So that's a problem that we need to solve. So to make it practical to deliver television services into the home, we need to compress the video, we need to reduce the data rate of it, whether we're delivering over broadband or any other network into the home, for example, cable, satellite, or through the air into the aerial. Now, the way compression works is you take your video, and this is my video, and to compress it, you take out the bits that aren't needed, you squeeze it, you deliver it over your network, and then when you get to the other end, you expand it back up again. It may not look exactly the same as before, depending on how much you've compressed it, but you'll get something resembling the original pictures. Now, an organisation known as MPEG, the Moving Pictures Experts Group, has been working on compression algorithms for the last 30 years. And over that time, they've generated 4 generations of algorithm, each one giving approximately double the compression of the previous one. Now, today, high-definition services are delivered using the 2nd generation standard from MPEG, known as H.264 or AVC, or Advanced Video Coding. And if you have a data rate of about 10 megabits per second, you can deliver a reasonably good high-definition television experience. So that's a compression rate going from 1,200 megabits per second down to 10 megabits per second. So that's a compression of 120 times. So what rate do we really need? Some broadcasters would use a higher rate than 10 to get better quality. Some might use a lower rate to save money. It also depends on the type of content you want to send. For example, some content, for example animations, are quite easy to compress. So drama type content is very easy to compress. But some content is much harder to compress. So something like live sport, much harder to compress. So after compressing the content, how do we get it across the internet onto your phone? And the answer is we use exactly the same technology as is used for getting web pages onto your phone. We use HTTP, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now, web page isn't a single thing on the internet. It's made up of lots of different bits. The main text, there's pictures, there's advertising, and so on. So your phone might be asking for hundreds of different things just to load one web page. So when it comes to TV, TV is continuous. BBC One doesn't stop, it just keeps going, keeps going. Even a movie is 2 hours long. It's a continuous piece of content. So how do we make it available to the same mechanism of use web pages? And the answer is we split it up. We split it up into segments. Now these segments can be any size you want, but typically, these days, they're about 6 seconds long. And so what your phone will do is it will request a first segment over the network, and then once it's got that, it will request the next segment, and then the next segment, and so on, building up a buffer, a store of data in the phone ready to play out when it's got enough to get started. Now how much could it download to start with? It could download, in theory, the whole of a movie, because the whole movie is already there on the internet. And you can buffer that all on your phone. But is that a good idea? It might be from your user experience point of view, because whatever happens to the network, if the network goes bad during this time, you've got that data on your phone and player will continue. But from the service provider point of view, what happens? What happens there, if you watch the first 5 minutes and then you say, I've seen enough of this, and the whole movie's downloaded, the service provider is going to be wasting some of its money there, delivering that to you. So it's up to the service provider to decide how to do this. Some might only allow you to deliver just a little way ahead, maybe tens of seconds ahead of where you're watching. Other service providers might say you can buffer 2 minutes ahead of where you are. It's different costs for the service provider, and it's a different user experience possibly for you as the user if your network connection goes bad. So how do we know the data rate we should use for compressing the video? We don't know how good your internet connection is. You may have a good connection, you may have a slower connection, you may have a connection that is good some of the time and occasionally goes bad. Particularly if you're on a mobile phone and you move around, you can have a good signal at one point and then later not such a good one. So what we do is when we encode each 6-second segment, we encode it at a different bit rate, a high rate, a lower rate, an even lower rate, and a very, very low rate that will give you a very low quality picture, but it will keep your content flowing. So then what has to happen is your phone, when you request the content, it says, how good is my network connection? It's good. I'll request a high quality segment. It's still good. I'll request another high quality segment. Oh, the network's looking a little bit worse now. I'll go for a lower quality segment. And another lower quality segment. Oh, it's gone really bad now, really bad now. I'm getting a very low one. And another very low one, but suddenly your network connection gets better again, you can go back up to the high rate and carry on. So the user experience is you have continuous play out, making the most of your network, but if your network varies, your quality will vary. So this is all okay for movies and other pre-recorded content. All your content can be on the server at the start before you start streaming it to your phone. You can just start requesting at the start and work your way through the movie. But sport is different. Sport is live. Any other live content is the same. It hasn't happened yet. So the question is, what content, this is content that's already been made, is on the server. This is content that's in the future, it hasn't been made yet. This is the live point in the action. When your phone first makes a request, which of these segments should it get first? If it gets this one first, it's going to have very, very limited buffering on the phone. So if your network goes bad, it can't recover and the player will stop, but you will have low delay. So what's normally done is you choose a segment that's 3 segments low. So you get this one, you go back in time 3 segments, or 18 seconds in this case, and you get this one first. And you can get that one quickly because it's available. You can get this one quickly because it's available. And this one quickly as it's available, it's already made. You can't get this one yet because it's not been made yet. That action has not happened yet. So your phone's sitting there quite happy now. It's got 18 seconds of data stored there. If your network goes bad for a while, you're fine. And then as the next segment gets made, the action takes place. Maybe your network's dropped a bit, you go down to a lower quality level. Maybe The next one, you go down, and then you can go back up again because the network gets better. So that's how it works. Now the problem here is because we had to go back 3 segments, we were watching everything late. You're watching it after it's happened. And people watching on conventional broadcasts might see the pictures long before you do on your phone. And typically, we're seeing delays of maybe 30 seconds, 60 seconds before pictures appear on phones. Now the problem we have as researchers is to try and find a balance between how much delay we have, the quality of the segments. Do we want to avoid these lower quality segments? And do we want to achieve continuous player, or are we happy to accept stalling? So that's what we've got to do. We've got to try and find ways to implement the player, find algorithms to run on the player that overcomes this problem and gives you the best compromise we can. Now we've been doing some work with Lancaster University on this, looking at good algorithms to run on the phone. And we've also been looking at how users react to this. What do users actually want? And the only way we can find out what users really want is to actually ask them. So we've run some tests in the past, which we call subjective tests, where we show people some videos and we ask them what they think about them. How annoying is this particular problem? How annoying is a drop in quality? How annoying is a pause? And so on. And what we're going to do now, building on the work that we're doing with Lancaster, we're actually going to run another subjective test. And we'd really appreciate any help you can give with this. All that's involved is spending about 10 or 20 minutes of your time looking at some videos on a television, on a phone, on a tablet, on a computer, and entering your opinions on them. Are they good? Are they annoying? Are they very annoying? And so on. It's all anonymous, but any help you can give us, we really appreciate it and really help us to develop our research. The link to do this is on the website, will be available to you afterwards. Now thanks for listening, I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. It's quite interesting, isn't it, to see actually how complicated it all is behind the scenes, because us as users, we just see video on a tablet or mobile phone, and really don't have much of an understanding as to what's going on in the network and what the service providers need to do to prepare their content. So it's really interesting. Thank you for that, Mike. If any people have questions, you can ask them on the chat. I think you can just do that by clicking on the chat button at the bottom. Let's see if we've got any coming through. So Mike, I've got a question. Sometimes when two people are in the same room together and they're watching the same content, maybe it's a sports match, a live sports match or something like that, the pictures that come out on one screen don't necessarily appear on the other screen at the same time. They're sort of misaligned in time. Could you explain to me why that's happening?
Yes, it's because each phone is behaving completely independently of the other phones that are around. So your phone will at some point you say let's watch this content, and your phone will go off to the internet and you'll find all these pieces of content, and it will choose which one to get first. So it might get as we saw in the video, the one that's the third oldest one. But how old is that third oldest one? Has the newest one just been made, or was it made 5.5 seconds ago? So there's already a variation of up to the segment length, which we said might be 6 seconds. So you might be lucky and join just at the point that a new segment's been made, in which case your delay would be much lower than somebody who joins just at the wrong time, and a segment's just about to be made, and so they're an extra like 5.5 seconds delayed.
So you're suggesting that they could be offset by up to a segment length. So if we've chosen 6 seconds as our segment, then they could be offset by up to 6 seconds.
It could be even more. It could be even more, right? Because you go back in time for those 3 segments, and you probably won't start playing until you've got those 3 buffered in your phone. And how long does that take? It depends on how fast your network connection is. So you could be on a very fast connection and get those 3 segments very, very quickly, just in maybe less than a second even. If you're on a slightly slower connection, it might take more seconds. And so you can see that if you're lucky, you might just join at the right time and have a fast connection, get started really quickly. Alternatively, you might be on a much slower connection and join at the wrong time. So you could potentially be many more than just 5 seconds out from your friend just sitting next to you.
Okay, thanks. So I guess
just following on from that a little bit. There are solutions in the standards bodies for getting around this. We can, by putting information in, so when the phone first starts, and I didn't go into this level of detail in the video, but when the phone first starts, it will request a file that tells it where the segments are and how many are available and so on. We can put some timing information into that to say when to, or how to synchronize your playback to real time. Now, BT Sports now launched a new service that they're calling Watch Together. And the idea of this is you could watch any live TV channel, for example, a football match, with up to 3 friends, and you can have face-to-face chat with them while you're watching it. And the playouts will be synchronized to effectively the organizer of that session, using exactly this technology for synchronizing playback.
Okay, so there are some solutions coming along as well. Okay, that's good. Obviously, I appreciated that you've got this variation in quality potentially because of the network changing, and we saw different size segments coming down as our network is underperforming or is busy and congested. I just got a good sort of general question really, in that we're seeing more and more content going onto the internet now. Do you think that the pictures that we're going to be experiencing that are delivered over the internet be better or worse than the pictures that we see just delivered through the normal sort of TV or through your aerial?
That's a very good question. In the past, the best pictures you were getting, even going back 5 or 10 years, the best pictures you'd get would be through the traditional broadcast, whether that's over terrestrial, into your aerial, satellite cable or whatever. But nowadays, we're seeing a shift, particularly now we're starting to see some UHD, ultra high definition 4K services coming along. They tend to be delivered over the broadband networks, over the IP networks, rather than over the other networks. So particularly over terrestrial through the aerial, there's a lot of competition there for bandwidth, for spectrum. There's a lot of pressure to move some of that off of TV distribution onto general mobile data. And so what we're finding is a lot of the new innovative services are coming over the broadband network. So in a way, we're seeing better and better picture quality over the internet, whereas the traditional terrestrial networks are staying pretty much where they've been for a long time now.
So we're seeing all the new innovations on the internet, and the broadcast systems are staying pretty static. So I guess to follow on with that, I've heard 4K and 8K. What's 4K and 8K? You mentioned HD in your video as well. I mean, can you enlighten us, please?
Yes. So they're different resolutions. They're different numbers of megapixels per picture. So HD was effectively just 2 megapixels per picture. So if you had that in a camera now, you'd think that was pretty poor. But that's what most of us still watch as conventional TV broadcast. It's 2,000 pixels across by 1,000 pixels high. 4K or UHD is twice as much horizontally, twice as much vertically. So that's 4,000 across roughly and 2,000 down. And then our 4K services around. I did some experimental work with BT and BT Sport and the BBC back in 2014. It doesn't seem that long ago, but we did an experiment around the 2014 World Cup final where we tried to deliver 4K coverage of the World Cup final live over the broadband network. We did that to the top of BT Tower. All worked very well. 1 year later, BT Sport had Europe's first live 4K TV service showing live sport in 4K. So 4K has been around for a while now. We've now started looking at 8K, which is now 4 times as much again, which is 8,000 pixels across by 4,000 down. So that's 32 megapixels per picture. So that's pretty good pictures. We were doing some experimentation on football matches early in the year. We've had to obviously pause that research for the moment because of the football season stopped for a while, and now the priority is just getting sport back on TV rather than doing experiments. But that will come along in due course, I think.
Okay.
But it's not just about resolution as well. There's other aspects to picture quality, and I sort of hinted at that in the introduction. Also looking at better contrast. Now that goes under the name high dynamic range. It just means a wider range from the blacker blacks up to the whiter whites. Also looking at what's called wider color gamut, which means a wider range of colors on your TV screens. So you might not be aware that in the past, the range of colors you can actually see on TV screens was quite limited. But we're now, with UHD, moving to a wider range of colours. So it's colours you'd see in the natural world. It's not colours you've never seen before. It's just colours you've never seen before on your TV screen.
So I've certainly noticed on my mobile phone, each time I get a new phone, the screens just seem to get better and better. And so I guess what you're saying is that there is technology for delivering video to take advantage of those better and better screens coming along, and there's resolution to just one aspect of it. I've got another question here. You mentioned the compression, and you showed very graphically the collapsing of the cardboard box. How does it work? I mean, it sounds like magic. You can't just. I mean, how does it work?
That is a very good question, and the way people have been doing this actually hasn't changed fundamentally in the last, I think 30, 35 years. So techniques started to evolve in the late 1980s, around the time I was starting to work in BT Applied Research. And the basic idea is you notice that one picture is very, very similar to the previous picture. So the most simple thing you can do is not send each picture as a new picture. You send it as a difference relative to the previous picture. But things move. You know, objects move in pictures. I mean, if you look at this picture, my background is absolutely static, but I'm moving around. So what we do is we divide the picture up into blocks, and for each block we say this block of this picture is like this block of the previous picture, and we associate a vector, which we call a motion vector, with it. So we can offset the previous picture to predict the current picture. So that's the basic technique, and that was first standardized back in about 1990. And what's happened in the industry since then is we've applied more and more processing power, more and more memory, but essentially the techniques have been pretty much the same. It's just what wasn't feasible 30 years ago now is. And so we've as general technology and general processing power and memory have improved over the years, we've been able to do things we've never really even considered feasible before. And as I said in the video, every 10 years roughly, we've had a new generation of compression scheme that gives us about double the compression we've had before. And this is a big time in the industry now, as a couple of new standards have just been finished. One called VVC, Versatile Video Coding, which was only approved about a week or two ago, should give us, again, a factor of doubling of the compression compared to the standard we're currently using for UHD services.
Okay, and just having given us that brief overview of how compression works, I guess that's why some content is easier to compress than others. You'd mentioned in the video that cartoons and animations are really easy, but live sports is really difficult. I guess there's more things moving. Is there?
That's right. The more unpredictable movement there is, the harder it is to compress, because there's this prediction from one picture to the next doesn't work as well. So if you think about an animation, there's very little detail quite often. It's very often very plain backgrounds, and everything moves perhaps not so much. And the same with drama. A lot of drama content is a static camera and maybe people moving around in the scene, but the background's static. Sport, the camera tends to follow the action. Things like grass are very hard to compress. They're almost like random noise in a way. Similar, anything with water in the background, very hard to compress.
When you say hard to compress, is that it needs more data to represent those pictures, or it just needs more processing power?
Probably both. It takes more processing power to work out the best match of the current picture to the previous one. It also requires more data rates. If the prediction process isn't working very well, if one picture is not similar to the previous picture, if you want to achieve a given quality, which you normally do, then that means you need more bits.
Okay. Okay, one last question here. I think we've not got a huge amount of time left. Somebody here was at British Science Week, and they said that they'd done some subjective tests. You mentioned subjective tests, and I think you're planning on doing some more subjective tests. Can you just give us a bit more info about that? What sort of things are you learning from these subjective tests? What's the point of doing them?
Yes, so the point of doing them is to find out what viewers' opinions are. We can always measure things, with mathematical objective measures. But what we really need to understand is how people react to things. So we've carried out a number of subjective tests. The most recent one we did was at British Science Week at Dashiell Park in 2018, where we were showing people videos with different impairments. Well, videos that maybe the video stalls after a while and stops. Stops for rebuffering, resumes after, say, 4 seconds. We showed other content where it was playing absolutely fine, and then it would drop down to a very low quality, a very small size Lego brick, and then it jump back up again, and others where we look at a different technique again, where the video would stop, but when it would resume from where it would have been had it not stopped at all. So it's a bit, we say it's a bit like listening to the radio, driving through a tunnel, you miss a bit, but when you come out again, it's just wherever it would have been had you continued to listen. And we showed this to about 500 of the school children that came to British Science Week, and we had, as well as that, about 60 BT volunteers also taking part in the experiment. Very interesting piece of work. We wrote it up, we published it at the SMPTE conference in Los Angeles that year. It went down very well. And what we found was that, one, younger people and older people react differently. We did the tests on TVs and on tablets, and we found that the older people were more sensitive to issues on the TV and the younger people more sensitive on the tablets. We also found that the interruptions were the most annoying impairments. That's what annoyed people most. And there was a very distinct, across all the age groups, across both devices, a very distinct order. Of the different stops that we looked at, the least annoying one, or the preferable one, was where it just paused for 4 seconds and then resumed. That was followed by where it paused for 2 seconds twice. And then we had the 2 cases of missing content, which people didn't like very much at all. They didn't like missing bits, particularly if we were looking at, say, a piece of football action. You see an attack building up, and then it would pause, and when it resumed, the ball was in the back of the net. People didn't like that. But that is one technology that may give us very, very, very low delay. Now, as I said in the video, we're looking to run another subjective test with the University of Lancaster. That isn't quite ready yet, partly because it's going through an ethical approval process. But once that is ready, we'll be able to send out a link to everyone on this session, and hopefully you'll be able to find 10 minutes to look at some videos and tell us your opinions on them.
Okay, great. So I encourage anybody to participate in those subjective tests. They're really valuable. They give us really useful information to help improve video for everybody, really. That's what it's all about at the end of it. I think we're out of time now, guys. Thanks very much, Mike.
Thanks very much for listening.
Okay, great.